Yeah, well, thank you everyone for coming. So my name's Katie, and I'm a senior this year in mechanical engineering. And I've been involved with EWB at MSU for the past 4 years, and I'll be facilitating today's discussion. All right. So with that, we can go ahead. I'll read a little bit about the history of our partnership. So after 14 years of working in the Kwesero region of Kenya, individuals with connections to Kwesero, Kenya decided to form a legal trust, which is formally called M-KOKO, to work with their partners EWB at MSU. Ronald Myunga initiated the relationship in 2004 by writing the proposal to Engineers Without Borders USA, who gave the project to the newly formed Montana State University chapter. The initial scope proposed by Ronald Myunga was to provide drinking water access and pit latrines to all 56 primary schools in Kwesero. Since the partnership's start, 33 projects have been implemented, including borehole wells, composting latrines, rainwater catchment systems, a water pipeline, and a biogas latrine. Of these, 17 are still considered fully operational. The remaining projects are either no longer functional or only partially functional, and one project was closed and relationships remain with the remaining schools. The Kwesero Board was a temporary organization consisting of schools and district-level officials in water and sanitation, organized to manage a district-wide school self-reporting survey and to rank schools for future projects. The benefits provided to the project and to schools resulting from the local management entity were enormous. The structure of the board was not set up for a long-term operation and was effectively defunct by 2015 after providing a rich history of lessons learned. At this point, much of the Kwesero-based work was performed by a single coordinator who filled the role of a local support NGO. In 2017, a small team from EWB at MSU traveled to Kwesero to discuss and to listen to challenges in our partnership. And in November of 2017, a team of 10 Kenyans traveled to Bozeman, Montana, for a summit to continue this discussion. Through these conversations, the Kenyan team decided to become the legal trust M-KOKO, which will serve as the partner NGO for EWB at MSU projects in Kwesero, increasing year-round project support, facilitating local fundraising, and working with the school district to enable project monitoring and help individual projects access technical assistance when necessary. In 2019, EWB at MSU and M-KOKO signed a memorandum of understanding. The partnership between M-KOKO and EWB at MSU offers opportunities to both complete technical work and have cultural exchange for both sides. In the formation of M-KOKO, a joint mission and vision was adopted by both organizations, with a focus on education to help ensure project benefits are more equally distributed. Through this partnership, both sides have learned valuable lessons by experimenting with new methodologies and through critical assessment of past actions. With that, it is a personal privilege to introduce the partnership founder, Ronald Myunga, who will expand on the formation of our partnership and the three main lessons we'll focus on today. So Ronald, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I'm really honored to be part of this discussion. The journey of setting up the M-KOKO project or the M-KOKO trust started a long time ago in 2003. And from the very beginning, what I wanted as a person was that I wanted to make a contribution back to the community where I'd gone to school, and just wanted to open the space for more students to go to school, especially the girls, by enjoying good water and enjoying good sanitation. And that was the motivation behind my writing the proposal to Engineers Without Borders. So when I started setting up this project, I was clear that I wanted to ensure that we didn't set up any organization that would become more like a valve in terms of controlling resources to the community, but rather just create an interaction between community and community. And so that's why initially we did not have any organization that was standing between the community in Kwesero and the community in Montana. But as we went along, we realized that the burden of deciding which school was going to benefit from the project that were being given out, it was it was becoming harder and harder for me and the other individuals or volunteers who are involved to decide which is the next school and be objective doing that. That's why we then set up the board as a temporary measure that will help us to make that decision in a more objective and systematic manner, where schools could apply to a board that was more more objective and more representative of the Wisero community. So that initially was the source of the board, and that was what we really wanted the board to do. But as the project grew, the board continued to play a bigger and bigger role, and as expected, they started failing in their mandate because really they were not really designed to do that. And so that's when we then started making the decision of setting up an organization that would be an intermediary between the community and Montana. But what we did also when we were setting up this organization was to always remember what was the initial, our initial aspirations, in that we wanted to create something that is very lean. When you look at the meaning of M-KOKO in the Luya language, it's actually a very, simplistic bridge where, it's just a log that serves you to cross from one side to the other. And so what we wanted is to create an organization that is really there in terms of linking one community with another. And that's really our vision. In terms of the need for when you are doing projects for long-term relationships, I think it's been very, very clear from our learnings that if we had just done one project and left, I think we wouldn't be what we are today, and the impact we have created would not have been the same. And also the lessons we've learned. The lessons we have learned have been beyond engineering. They have gone into the whole process of management. So it's important to have long-term relationships between communities. And in this regard, we have been a very unique group within EWB, being the only group, I think for a long time, the only group that had a multi-year project history, that you are working with same community for a long time. That has brought good lessons, it has brought relationships, and it has also enabled us to evolve, not just in terms of the technology, but in the way we also deal with those communities. The other lesson that we learned is that although we had this, what you can call a fantasy of an idea whereby we thought two communities would just work with each other without an intermediary, it's become very clear that you need an organization that can serve as an intermediary between two entities. But that robust organization does not just have to happen on the community side, it also needs to happen on the student side, because a student group like MSU, EWB at MSU, has a lot of high turnover, and you need to have someone who ensures institutional history. The board members you have here and the ones that are missing but are part of this leadership are people who have a passionate, desire to change the lives of the community. These are guys who are true volunteers, and that is what you need in an organization like this, and that's what you're trying to build with M-KOKO. So on the third thing is that we have always had this motto that we make mistakes with confidence, and we make mistakes with confidence because we know that apart from everything else, we are trying to create impact, but this is a project that is supposed to be for students, that enables students to learn and do things the way they want, the way they want to learn, so long as they are not crossing certain lines, is important for a growing organization. So I'm very proud of that legacy, and I believe those 3 points are really important in making an organization successful in any endeavor it undertakes.
Ronald, thank you for going through the history and for introducing those lessons. We'll move on now, and we'll have each of the panelists introduce themselves. So Ronald, I think you introduced yourself a little bit here, but we can start with you.
So my name is Ronald Omyonga. I was born and raised in Quisero. I am an architect by training, but I've always been somebody who tries to do stuff. Right now, I am part of a co-founder of a startup that is trying to change the construction industry in IT. And so that's what I'm currently doing. But at M-KOKO, I am a member of the board. Yeah.
My name is Chris Allen. I'm the faculty advisor for EWB at MSU. I'm a transplant to Montana, originally from California. It was right when I moved to California, from California to Montana in 2006 that I became involved with EWB at MSU. So I've been involved with the project in varying capacities since 2006.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Olieka, born and bred in Quisero. I'm an engineer stroke HR professional. I started off as an engineer, but transitioned into HR. And currently, I do HR consulting work. I started working with M-KOKO in 2010, 2011, when we were implementing the MEM project. And at that time, I was on the community side. I was a member of the community supporting the implementation of that project. Thank you. And lastly, I'm the chairman of the M-KOKO board. Thank you.
Sarah?
So I was an EWB volunteer in 2008 and 2009 as a graduate architecture student and traveled to Kenya. I think that really led to my career of doing social design with nonprofits and kind of thinking about how you can maximize the impact of projects by a deep engagement with communities. So I've been spent a lot of time in East Africa, most of which in Rwanda, but have overseen some projects in Kenya, very near Quisero, and I am eager to kind of help EWB carry forward institutional knowledge and to help think about how a process of design and implementation can maximize impact.
Hi, my name is Jessica Rosa. I have grown up here in Montana. I'm currently a student at Montana State University, and I have been working with Engineers Without Borders for the last 4 years. I've done a variety of different things. I've gotten to travel to Kenya twice, and my main purpose on both of those trips was to kind of help smooth the relationship and help formulate the relationship, the official relationship between M-KOKO and EWB at MSU. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to be here and really excited to be in these discussions for today.
Thank you to everyone on the panel for being here. We're really excited to have you. So we'll move into some discussion now about our partnership and its evolution. Chris, we'll start with you. Could you tell us a little bit about our first project and what you think we learned from that?
Yeah, so in kind of answering the question, what were some of the most important events in our history? The thing that stood out most to me was our first project. Not because it was a success, but because it was a pretty utter failure, and it failed on a very fast time frame. So we implemented a well at Shirali, which is a primary school, and within 6 to 7 months, it was completely non-operational. It had taken us 3 years to do the fundraising on the MSU side to enable the construction of the well. And our second team, which I was a part of, came to find the whole system in disarray. It was a very unique travel team because we had some engineers, we had a film student, we had a sociology student, and a very diverse group of characters. We were confronted with our first failure, and there was a lot of really rich discussion and an initial knee-jerk reaction to blame the school for not following through on their end of the bargain. And after that, there was what, in my opinion, was a major turning point for our organization. We did not blame the school. We worked with our partners in Kenya to do essentially a root cause analysis and to say, why did this problem fail, before we start pointing fingers as to lay blame for the failure. And the result formed kind of the foundation for our future work in terms of we exposed a lot of failures in terms of our relationship and project initiation and setup, and mandating responsibilities and roles that weren't necessarily locally viable in the school system itself. It also highlighted the importance of a diverse group on our student side. We were able to fall back on one of our sociology professor advisors and start thinking about our projects in a social context instead of merely a technical one. And Ronald, I'm going to quote you here. I feel like it was with our first project, or going through there, we developed we have a social project with some technical components. And it was through this project that we redefined our relationships working with the community. We learned better how to define community. And we started doing far more work with people instead of just design solutions. And I think that really set the tone for us in a major way. And I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think what I wanted to say is that Chris, you really put it very well. That initially we thought about this as an engineering problem, and after the experience in Shirali, we actually realized that we needed to think more than just engineering. And I think from that point, you can safely say that we have spent more time experimenting on the social side than we have done experimenting on the engineering side. It was from the Shirari example, because one of the things that we had those days was that we had a water management committee that was based outside the school. So the project was based in the school, but the project management committee was actually the community. That's what we said. So we were separating the community from the school. And that actually fell flat on the face, because the asset was based in the school, and the school didn't own it and didn't care about it. So that's when we learned the first thing that, okay, the school is owned by the community, is part of the community, and if we are going to survive going forward, the assets we create have to be assets and managed by the school. And so that's when we started reorganizing the whole water management committee so that they are part of the schools in which they are based. And so, as Chris has said, we realize that when you're dealing with community projects, technology is just one of them. There is the management side and there is the social side that is much more harder. And I think if engineers and architects and whoever technical people that are seated here will spend most of their innovative skills in designing the social structures, the engineering is much easier. Yeah.
I know what I was really surprised by was how we were able to use or rely upon some of the relationships between folks that had been working essentially with you, Ronald, and Jackson and Francis for a relatively short period of time, several years, but still had enough history to be able to challenge ideas and have that trust to be able to have some really difficult conversations and understand that there were structural errors made on the EWB initiation side, and we were able to write that. And so I think that comes back to those durable relationships. I feel like this was a very important lesson learned about durable relationships and what it means to have a robust entity, and that robustness really does come from diversity.
No, I think the there have always been major events, but the first one was actually when we finally had water being drilled in Quisero. Chris can talk about it as a total failure, but the water came out. And the first water that had ever come in such a place. And so for me, that was real something. And it proved that the people who had been visiting, because the students had been visiting and the faculty members had been visiting, and so it proved that they had been visiting for a purpose. It is easy to start off and start telling people about social structures and systems of management, but if you have never implemented anything, you do not have any moral authority to talk about anything. So the total failure that Chris is talking about also gave us moral authority to be able to tell people, I think this we did wrong. So engineering, the success of engineering was also useful in us starting to tackle some difficult problems. And so for me, that was really important. The other hard thing was in those early days was just how to engage volunteers for a long time. You see, there wasn't it's easy for me, for Steve here, Frank, to volunteer because we have a salary or we have some source of income. But one of the challenges is really having to make some people volunteer when they have to choose between volunteering and surviving for that day. So it had to teach us to rethink that whole idea about volunteering, and we came up with very many creative ways of going around that. But so for me, the water coming out was a good story. We had serious challenges in terms of defining how we're going forward. I also remember how we set up the board. We were seated under a tree. I think Chris was there. So it was very exciting discussions, but under that tree, we came up with what we thought was a great idea called the board. And we walked away knowing that we had finally fixed the problems of Quisero for good. I think years later, we started wondering whether we just created another monster, but that is the story for another day. Those are the ones I can talk about for now.
Sarah, maybe I'll turn this over to you a little bit to talk about your experience with implementing like engineering project or social projects with an engineering component.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Ronald and Chris are speaking about in terms of understanding intentions and having clarity of mission, as well as having deep engagement within those that the projects are serving, really speaks to the way of working that I've learned through my experience with Mass Design Group. I think that one of the partnerships I wanted to share an experience with was that of with Partners in Health in northern Rwanda. I spent nearly 9 years working with this organization in the same place, developing a campus for healthcare. And Partners in Health had a very deep presence within the community there, and we spent a lot of time and energy working together over the process of 9 years to deliver several projects. But I think what was a lesson for me in terms of that our partner's relationship to the community it was working in was that it was able to help us maximize the impact that project was able to achieve, and to leverage the priorities of those that also can support the project. And I think that while I understand that Rwanda and Kenya are very different in many ways, but that I think that having such a embedded entity within Quisero is going to help us leverage those priorities of the parents, the teachers, the ministry, the districts, of those that we are working with, and that they will find ways to support, to reciprocate. And so I think we see this process as being important. We call it proximate, we call the long sort of engagement of being proximate, accompaniment, that you are there throughout the process, that you are actively listening, that you are asking questions, that you are trying to design for solutions that meet those needs and getting feedback along the way, and also looking back to see how things, how successful our intentions were. So to do that, you need to establish clear metrics for measuring and understanding how you would evaluate before and after, and also to be honest and retrospective about what parts of the process didn't go well, because it's not the end product that matters, it's the process of getting there.
Stephen, I'll go to you to talk a little bit more about one of our major projects, MEM, and kind of how implementing that has gone throughout this time.
Thank you. Actually, I want to talk about MEM because I was involved in the implementation from the community side of things. And some of the things I'll mention here are things that I experienced directly. In terms of capacity, I think this was the implementation of MEM tested EWB stroke M-KOKO's capacity to deliver a large-scale project with a number of components, so that it was not just a borehole. The second part was then, how do you involve the community? What would be the best way to involve the community in the implementation and management of the project? And this, as much as at that particular point was managed, it's still a challenge even up to today. However, at that time, and when you look at implementation, the community made contributions to the project in the form of money, which was to supplement the students' living costs, or in kind. We had community members providing accommodation for the students who are coming in, I think for 2 or 3 years while this project was being implemented. Then in addition to that, there was then a need to constitute a management or implementation committee to manage the operations of the project. And this included the school heads for the schools that were going to be impacted by this project. We had, I think, 4 primary schools separated around 5 to 6 kilometers. And then we had the community members who came in as the water users representatives. And that committee was set up and they started running the project. But according to me, I think the fact that there was this entity on the ground, which was M-KOKO, but not named M-KOKO at that time, but led by Ronald, ensured that there was this coordination and linking to the community that allowed for the successful implementation of this project. The third aspect is mutual benefit. When you look at the way these projects are designed, you will see that the idea of mutual benefit cemented the partnership between M-KOKO and EWB. And it provided a good platform for MSU students to test their ideas and to learn essential skills. Here we are talking about project management skills, planning, implementation, and monitoring. We're also talking about engineering design. Even as we talk now, we have these different groups within our collaboration. We have the water team, we have the structures team, we have the sanitation team. And before anything is implemented, just like in the case of MEM, we have this back and forth as designs are developed and students are trying their ideas and they're learning about the materials that they are going to use and so on. And therefore, there's a lot of learning that takes place. But one of the things that I noted with this project and even other projects that we've had is when students take on leadership roles. For example, we have these different teams, structures, water, and so on. And actually what happens is that it is students who lead these teams and organize and plan how things happen. And therefore they get hands-on experience in terms of leadership. And then the back and forth involves a lot of communication. Emails going back and forth and information being shared. both about the designs and also the implementations and the progress that is being made. And therefore, you can see that, yes, funds are raised in the US. They are benefiting a local community in Kenya, in Quisero. But as the students are going through this process, they are also learning, and they are learning big. Therefore, this approach demonstrated that learning-based project outcomes actually enable mutual benefit. The students learn as they implement something beneficial to the community. But then that does not mean that there have not been challenges. How do we ensure that the community owns the project and there is accountability on the part of that team that manages the project? This is something that we've struggled with. And we are still learning. And we are still looking for ways to make it better, to make it work, so that that investment then really benefits the community. The other thing that we've struggled with, or we are learning, is how do you make the school management work with the community on a project? As Ronald mentioned earlier, you go and implement this project in the school, but then you are saying the community owns it. And so there is a bit of juggling. It's your project, it's our project, and so on. And therefore, we are still also trying to manage that challenge of how do we bring these two parties together, school management, as well as the local community representatives, to work together to ensure the success of the project. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just thanks Steve for saying that. And as the grand old man of this project, there will always be something I want to add on. What does it mean to work with the government, or what does it mean to work with the community? You know, at some point we thought if you work with a school, and that school is in the community, then you are working with the community because the school belongs to the community.
Yes.
And the school is also a government school. So we are working with the government. But we have also sometimes faced interesting times where the same government, where you have an entity of government like a water management authority coming to us to tell us we implemented a wrong project in partnership with another government institution. So there's a point where we looked like we were not working with the government. And it's interesting. So what does it mean to work with the government? Does it mean you work with everyone in government? Or yeah, so that is something we need to continue to learn in terms of what does it mean to engage with the government? And then what does it mean to engage with the community? If you engage with a school that is community-based, are you engaging with the community? And how does the relationship, what is the relationship between a school that consumes water as students and the people who are tapping, members of the community who are tapping water from that pipeline? So these are new dynamics that we have had to learn. We don't have answers for those questions, but these are some of the interesting things. And MEM actually came with lots of those lessons.
So kind of rounding out our discussion, we'll turn it over and talk a little bit about the summit that happened in 2017 and kind of where our partnership has gone since the formation of M-KOKO. So Jess, do you want to start us out by talking a little bit about the summit and what that was like for our partnership?
Yeah, so in November of 2017, we had a summit where we brought 10 of our Kenyan partners to the US to help us figure out how to formalize and continue this partnership in a lasting and a sustainable way going forward. This is 15 years into our history. There was a lot of things that had happened that kind of led us to this discussion and kind of led us to where we are today. But from that summit, I know the students on the student side of the organization got to learn a lot more in depth from our Kenyan partners about how the projects in the past have implemented and how this partnership has impacted this community, Quisero. And so it was really, these discussions were really valuable and beneficial in helping us shape our partnership going forward. And it was at this summit that that M-KOKO decided to become a organization, and that we would take the steps forward for them to become a legal community organization within Kenya that we could formalize. And so over the next few years, we have been working on this partnership, and we've seen the introduction of the M-KOKO board into the M-KOKO board and the M-KOKO management committee into our partnership, and how that has changed our relationships and how we've been able to continue the work going forward, because there was valuable work going on, and solidifying and formalizing it into a partnership that can work all year round and can work effectively and can go into those projects because we have so many of them and be on the ground all the time, which I think is a really big benefit for those projects and helps us better understand where we may have failed in the past and how we can learn from those failures. Because as Chris and as Ronald have mentioned, we talk a lot about what we can learn from our failures. We're not afraid to fail. We like to see how we can work forward from those. And so having people on the ground that we can work with all the time and work with year round gives us more insight into how we can better work from those failures going into the future. And so, yeah, the summit in 2017 was a real turning point for us when we were able to have our Kenyan partners here and work with kind of a larger group of EWB students, because typically our travel teams are 8 to 12 people, and there are 30 or 40 students who are working behind the scenes at any given time. And it was nice to see those connections and really learn the impact of what this relationship has had. And so, yeah.
Chris, I'll turn it over to you to add on.
Yeah, Jess, thank you very much for the overview. I very much agree with what you say. I'd also like to kind of put it, to me, the summit also represents a major opportunity for us to structurally begin focusing on mutual educational benefits. And we have spoken a lot in our history about genuinely partnering with groups. And I think the summit was a major transition for us to be able to structurally say, yes, we are doing this. We are investing in both sides of the organization. And I think with great benefit. I don't know if anyone on the M-KOKO side would like to add to that.
Yeah, so I would like to say something. I think that the summer travel was the travel by the team from Khwisero was really a major milestone in our lives, because that was really the first time when a team was actually traveling in the opposite direction, and so that was important. The only regret is that project, the team that went to MSU from Khwisero, the age group was very, very high. The average age was very high. We hope that one day we will have students also coming from Khwisero going the other side. And this really is one of the things that M-KOKO wants to try and do, having more local university students from Khwisero interact with the students from the other side, so that we have more like peers coming over.
So first of all, I'll just say thank you so much to all of the panelists for being here and taking your time out of today. From EWB at MSU, M-KOKO, we really appreciate all the work you do, as everyone said, and all of your patience that you have for us. Also, thank you to everyone from EWB who's here this morning. I know it's a busy school day, so we're really grateful that you could be on.
Yeah, for me, it's just to appreciate the support that we have received from EWB. And this is not just the money, but we sometimes actually fall back and reflect on the things that you guys do to guide us and so on. The other aspect is just to appreciate my team. As Ronald mentioned, all these guys actually volunteer their time for free, and sometimes their resources, even for the activities that we have in Western Kenya. And whenever we've called upon them to say, guys, we need this to move forward. They have always been available.
Stephen, I also want to appreciate everyone on both sides. I know that with all of the COVID restrictions, meeting and getting together has been very difficult. And I believe we are going through extraordinary lengths to make sure that we can meet and continue being productive together. And I'm just so thankful that we are now doing it as one large group in very different time zones. So that the ability to make that possible, I know how much work and the sacrifice required on everyone's part, and I really cannot thank you enough.
Thank you all so much for your time and for coming. And a special thank you to the panelists for the really great discussion.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a good day as we go to sleep.
Have a good night.
Bye, guys.